Hey everyone, I am here with our homeschool advisor. We're doing a continuation of the school series we did a few weeks ago. This is Laina Yeisley. Did I say that right? Yeah.
You got it. Yeah, thank you.
And she's going to be here to talk about homeschooling. So she's a great homeschool resource. We're going to, feel free to join us, ask questions, anything you want about homeschooling. We're here to answer them. And we'll continue this series on as well. We'll get to that at the end. But if you want to go ahead and intro yourself, Laina, that would be awesome.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Laina Yeisley, as Allison said, and I am a native of Pennsylvania, actually. So like many of you, my family moved here 10 years ago to the Raleigh area, and I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, and they are 17, almost 15, and almost 5. So we've been homeschooling from the beginning. A few years ago, I founded the Triangle Homeschool Resource Center to kind of help families in the area connect to the abundance of resources for homeschoolers here. I'm also co-founder of Carolina Homeschool Conference, which is a once-a-year kick off the school year local homeschool conference, and creator of the Homeschool Launchpad, which is a program to help you get started from zero to homeschooling in just a few weeks. So that's me and what I do here in Raleigh.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do hear that the Raleigh area is there's a lot of good resources with homeschooling. So I get that question a lot from people. What kind of things are there for homeschool? What kind of resources are available? Are there a lot of people in this area that do homeschool? Those types of things. So, yeah, if you want to talk about that.
Sure, yeah, there's a ton here. And I think it's a wonderful combination of things that have come together here to kind of make it almost like the perfect situation. I haven't found anything like it anywhere else in the country. We have a great deal of personal freedom in terms of how homeschooling is defined in our state law. So there's really not a whole lot of requirements to meet. So you're free as a parent to really source whatever works for your family. And in that, in Wake County, because of the year-round schools and the track outs, and there's been a ton of businesses, a ton of resources that have popped up to kind of meet that need, but those things are also available to homeschoolers as well. So any special interest that you could possibly think of that you want to pursue, there's somebody out there doing it and offering it for your kids. So that's a big part of it. And yes, like you said, just the population of homeschoolers. I think North Carolina is one of the top 5 states in terms of per capita homeschoolers. We have a ton of them here, and a lot of people fear that means our schools are terrible, and that's not the case at all. It's just I think part of it, the really transient population. There's a lot of people coming here, getting situated. They get plugged into homeschooling as kind of a bridge till they get settled, and then it's kind of what happened to our family. You end up just finding like, wow, there's so much we can do, that they stick with it. And, it kind of becomes a thing here. So there's a huge population of homeschoolers in Wake County, over 20,000. Wow. And so we have a lot of opportunity to kind of get together, to have groups, to have huge, there's sports leagues just for homeschoolers. There's all kinds of classes, labs, and stuff like that. So lots to do.
Well, that's awesome info. And I guess, could you share with us too, like the reasons why you chose homeschooling, or why some other people might want to consider homeschooling as an option?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton, there's many reasons to homeschool as there are homeschoolers. And when we started, like I said, we came from Pennsylvania. My oldest was in a wonderful preschool program. We loved it. It's not that we anticipated homeschooling at all. When he got ready for kindergarten, he missed the cutoff by a week. And his preschool teacher said to me, you really need to get him in kindergarten. Like, he's ready. Get him into kindergarten. And the only way we could do that was to put him in a private school, which was not financially feasible for us at the time. Yeah. So we started looking at charters and public schools, and it was just kind of one thing after another. And I think we had a lot of concerns that a lot of parents have. I grew up in a really small town in Pennsylvania. So did my husband. So, my eighth grade class had 13 kids in it. You know, my graduating high school class had 60. So I was expecting this real community, this small, like, get to know everybody. And I realized I was going to be putting my kid on a bus with a bunch of people I had no idea who they were, you know, who their families were, what they were interested in, anything like that. And, you know, it was just the testing already approaching kindergarten and the bullying, and there were all kinds of concerns. So that's kind of why we started. And it was really just supposed to be a year until we moved to a different school district where he could get age appropriately, you know, into the right class. And we ended up moving to North Carolina. So it was unfamiliar. I mean, my husband had lived in Durham for a little while after college, but when we moved to Raleigh, it was completely unfamiliar. So we rented for a while, like I see many people wanting to do. And that worked great. But we knew they weren't going to stay in that school. So we'll homeschool this year until we settle. And then we bought our house, and it was like middle of a year-round school, you know, cycle. My kids were like, no, we're not starting in the middle of the school year. So we're like, okay, one more year. And here we are. 12 years in.
Wow, 12 years. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. So my oldest is a junior now, and my youngest is in preschool. So it's wonderful. It's been wonderful for us.
So what has their experience been, you know, homeschooling now? Like, what's the daily schedule or routine that you guys kind of have? Any opinions on, you know, things to give advice, I guess, for people?
Yeah. So there's, you know, my kids love it. I couldn't pay them to go to school at this point. The freedom of it has been tremendous for our family. And like I said, moving here, our families are still all in Pennsylvania. My father, you know, my dad's a snowbird now, so he spends the winters in Florida. But having everybody so far away, you know, we really loved the freedom of being able to pick up and go and visit when we wanted to, you know, go home and ground ourselves when we needed that. So that is something that was huge and that we've really clung to as a family. And we're very, we guard our freedom, you know, in terms of schedule and everything, you know, very carefully. So that's been, but the big change this year for us is that one of the wonderful opportunities in North Carolina for homeschoolers is that the dual enrollment program, which is available to all the high schoolers in the community colleges. You can go to the community college, take some of your classes tuition free, and it goes both on a college transcript and a high school transcript. So as a homeschooler, we have ultimate freedom in terms of what, you know, his schedule, what classes he can fit into his day, what schools he can be enrolled in multiple community colleges at the same time, which is not something available to the public high school kids. So that's been a big change for us, and that we've kind of had to suck it up and deal with a school schedule. But so, you know, daily routine, and this is something I emphasize to all families. It's really, you know, the success of your homeschool is really going to be about how you cultivate the relationship with your kids in terms of learning. So, you know, I start out making sure I touch base with my kids every day. You know, now that my oldest just kind of has his work to do separate than what we're doing as a family, it's mostly a weekly thing with him, but that's good. It's that step toward independence too, right? So, so we touch base every day. You know, we have those things that are important to us as a family. Our homeschool is largely literature based. We do a lot of reading, and I still read to my high schoolers out loud. So, or we listen to audiobooks together. So we kind of start our days with that. Everybody kind of goes and does their independent work, and you know, for two high schoolers, a lot of it is independent work. And then I get to work with my preschooler. And they have, you know, a ton of time to do the things that they want to pursue. So, you know, my son is pursuing a certificate in welding, so he's working toward that certification. and his Boy Scout stuff. He's a real outdoorsy kind of person, so he gets lots of time to go out and explore, to work on his car. My daughter is a freshman, runs her own business, so she crochets toys and stuff, and she has an Etsy shop. She has some stuff in a shop in Apex, and so she runs that, and that takes up a good bit of her time. But she's also a competitive dancer. So, we have a lot of time to kind of pursue those things. Yeah. So we really condense our schoolwork in the morning, and it's kind of always been that way. And then we have our free afternoons to take field trips, do nature walks, go to groups and do, things with homeschool friends and stuff like that. So there's, just make sure you prioritize, and is what I like to tell families: work toward your goals, make sure you know where you're headed, and make those things a priority. So
right. So yeah, it sounds like benefits for homeschooling are things like flexibility in your schedule.
Oh yeah.
You kind of being able to steer the curriculum, or like certain, each kid has kind of their own passions and things like that. So being able to structure what works best for each individual versus just going off of a school structure. Would you say that that's why has its benefits?
Absolutely. And you can make it, and we do have that freedom here in North Carolina. Not all states, you don't get to choose kind of all the time what you get to do. So we really do. You can move maths around. If you don't think that your student is going to be headed towards calculus, then you can take a break freshman year. Instead of rushing right into algebra, do consumer math this year. Or they have an interest in statistics, something like that. You can, I do in high school especially, I do what I call my bucket planning system, where you kind of think about your subjects in terms of buckets, and maybe we didn't do any grammar this year, so there's no grammar in that bucket, but there's a ton of literature. So next year I'm going to add in the grammar into that English bucket, and eventually it kind of all gets covered. So yeah, and definitely tailoring it to their interests, to their abilities. If you have a student with special needs and you need to take things slower or maybe faster in some subjects, you can pursue that in any way that fits your family and your schedule. So
yeah, that's awesome. So one of the things too that I wanted to ask is basically the challenges that you face homeschooling. Like, what are some of those, and can you speak on just how you handle some of the challenges that come up?
Yeah, so it's always that the one fear that I hear from parents a lot of time: I'm not going to have the patience, right? And that's definitely a challenge. We are not gifted just because we decide to homeschool. All of a sudden, we get this huge dose of, patience and tolerance for our kids, like craziness. It doesn't happen. But, one of the ways that we've handled it is really we've taken education as a real family endeavor. And it's both kind of solved that problem in that we're all learning together. So when my kids hit a wall, sometimes I know exactly kind of where they are and what their thought is. And sometimes I'm hitting that wall too. So it really kind of changes that. It's not so much, they're not doing the work for me. Part of what COVID has done in sending kids home to parents, I think, has given parents at home a real leg up in what it took me years to learn as a homeschooler. And that is, you don't have to be their teacher. It's not the same relationship teaching your child at home as a classroom teacher in a classroom full of kids, even when they're working one-on-one with a kid that isn't their own. And I know a lot of classroom teachers who are now homeschooling who will tell you that. It's just different. So you see that as a parent, doing virtual learning with your kid, you're looking over their shoulder, you're coaching them, you're mentoring them, you're helping them through. You've outsourced the actual subject teaching, and the relationship, really fosters the coaching and the mentoring. And it took me years to kind of get to that point, to stop standing in front of my kids and trying to teach them that way, and realizing I can let somebody else's material do the teaching, and I coach them through it.
Right.
So that's a real advantage to parents who are thinking about making that transition now, is that you already kind of have that in your toolbox. And that's the way we've gotten through that. One of the other challenges, certainly, and it's a concern for everybody, and a lot of homeschoolers, especially when I started, would just kind of roll their eyes at the question of like socialization. How are my kids going to make friends? How am I going to make friends? I mean, that was my concern. How am I going to make friends if my kids aren't in school and I don't have a PTA or something? And that, certainly in Wake County especially, but in North Carolina in general, you have to kind of force yourself to stay home and do work. There's so much to do and so many things to get out there and so many groups to get involved in. That's kind of not a concern, but there is a consistency concern. You want to find, you want to figure out what exactly is it that my family values. What are the things that are our passions or my kids' passions, and steer them towards those resources if you have to choose, because that's where they're going to find their people, the people with the same passions, the same things that fire them up. And that's where you'll find consistency in terms of, yes, we see them from week to week or year to year, and you kind of grow that community.
Yeah.
So those are some of the challenges that we've come up with, and kind of how we
I can
figured it out.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the questions that I get often from people is just homeschool, the socialization, like you said, like how can I get my kids connected to other kids through sports or through clubs or different activities or things like that. So I mean, you kind of touched a little bit on that topic, but
it's there's so much to do, like I said, and you don't have to necessarily, because of all the checkouts and the year-round schedules, and you're not confined to just socializing with other homeschoolers. I mean, your community is your community, and that's what's beautiful about Raleigh. It's what I love, the people here. It's so welcoming, and everybody, it's hard to find a native, right? So everybody's moved through or in or out or at some point in time. So we all have that shared experience. So that's a big part of it, I think, that makes it so easy to find connection here and to do that. And, there are still classroom opportunities. We have beautiful resources. The museums downtown, when they are open and for classes, they have specific homeschool classes. You can go and do a lab, like a real hands-on microscopes, test tubes, all that stuff at the Science Museum downtown.
Wow.
And so you can have all of those experiences, learning from other teachers. That's still really important. Yes, you're going to be primary in your kids' education, but having other adults, teaching them and having them learn those personalities and styles and how to interact is still really important. And we just do that in a different way. You get to be a little bit more choosy about it, and also really flexible. So, if a situation gets overwhelming for your child, in crowds, or something like that, if there's some social anxiety, you get to kind of do that at your own pace. I've seen that with my two older kids are, very quiet. They like their downtime. They're truly introverts. So having to force them out of their shell is something that, we make a conscious effort to do as parents, but also they weren't really forced to do it faster than they were ready to do it.
Right.
And
absolutely.
So that's been a really an advantage to them. The challenge with my youngest is he's completely the opposite. He's a total extrovert. So finding him enough social stimulation is a challenge. But really, I mean, it's just kind of juggling. You're trading one set of things to juggle with the school schedule and all that kind of stuff, and homework and teachers and supplies, with another set of things to juggle. So it's just really what choice you're making and what's working for your family. So
right, that makes sense. Which, talking about that juggling, like you said, a lot of people this year were forced into homeschooling, with COVID and everything like that. So why is it more important now than ever, to learn about homeschooling and everything involved with homeschooling? Would you say COVID has really changed, some of the reasons why people are shifting homeschooling and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've definitely seen a surge in it for sure. If you were watching the news around North Carolina over the summer, the day that homeschool registrations opened for this year, they like broke the system. It was
Oh, wow.
overwhelmed. So more registrations this year than ever before. And whether or not they'll be temporary or long term, who knows? But that remains to be seen. But I think,
Right.
it's really kind of shown us that it's shined a light on we just take school for granted. I think, it's just become something, it was something we grew up with. It was something, and, that we kind of start to see, we go through our work day and, our life, and we're going boom, 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 putting kids through the grades. And like, yeah, you see when your kids are struggling, but now you kind of get to see as they're sitting down for those lessons, maybe you've noticed one subject that really lights your child up, or something that they really struggle to sit down to, where you're missing that in their daily rhythm. So I think it's given nice insight. It's given parents kind of a like that chance to look over their kid's shoulder really in the day to day and see what's working and what's not for them. And that's really important. And, I think having that freedom to homeschool, because everybody is at different comfort levels with how schools are handling things and when they're ready to go back and when they're not. So having that freedom, having that option has become really important to families. So I think from that side of things, homeschoolers have known for a long time we have to be vigilant about watching to make sure we still maintain the freedom to do that. And now I think all parents kind of see why that's important to have that choice out there. On the other hand, homeschool families who've been kind of out of the school loop for a while see why it's so important to have our schools well funded and staffed so that they can handle these kind of crazy times, So I think it's given us all as parents perspective to kind of see the other side. And, that's ultimately always a good thing, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for any, do you have any tips for parents that work? Can you work and homeschool?
Yeah, and absolutely. It really comes down to, first of all, the time that you spend homeschooling is significantly less than what your kids spends in school. So that's both a blessing and a curse when you decide to homeschool, in that, yes, you can do it in the evening. You can do it, after school hours, because it's going to take you less time. And the time it took your child to do homework previously, you could probably fit in their homeschool lessons. And then, so you kind of reverse it, right? You're teaching them at night and they're doing homework or practice during the day while you're busy working, kind of thing. So, but also, how do you keep them occupied all those hours of the day when you're trying to work? So that's definitely the challenge. And that's where plugging into community, plugging into groups, becomes really invaluable. You need to, if you can find another family that you can trade off hours during the week or what have you, where, they're helping kids with homework one day and you're doing it another day. If you have the flexibility with your work, that's, ideal. We do kind of have to be careful in terms of the pods and things that have kind of popped up. There's a real gray area in law between childcare and private schools and homeschools that you really need some advising to kind of navigate that. But there are definitely possibilities out there. And in terms of, giving your kids something to do for those extra hours, if you can work from home, it's absolutely possible to homeschool, even if you feel like you have to put in a really full day at home. And part of it is really taking time to figure out what interests your child and what keeps them curious and entertained, and really just kind of throwing resources at that. So whether it's, Legos, well, give them a room full of Legos and give them challenges. There are tons. You can go on Pinterest and say, okay, Lego challenge, build the Great Pyramid out of Legos, or build, whatever, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon out of Legos. And, and you can give them, hours at a time. I have I'll definitely put a link in the resources that we're going to share with folks, but I have a book I wrote back at the beginning of all of this called the Parents Pandemic Survival Guide, where, I talk about how to manage your time and block your time, and kind of how to create activities that match up with those time blocks for your kids, so that you take breaks, you check in, you need an hour for a meeting, then you have a box on the shelf that is going to entertain them for an hour, and you can kind of hand that off. And so there are lots of ways to kind of manage it that way.
Okay. Yeah, those are great tips. So I guess, where can people find resources? Where, is it a website? Is it contacting you? Like, what is the best way for people to find more information about you, about Triangle Homeschooling, all of those different things?
Yeah, well, trianglehomeschoolresources.com is my website.
Okay.
And I do try to blog there about, resources, especially in the Triangle area. And follow me on Facebook at Triangle Homeschool Resources. And that's, when I see classes and things like that pop up, I do try to share those there. Facebook groups are a great way to plug in. Things change rapidly on the homeschool scene. So It's really difficult for any one resource to kind of always have a contact for a co-op or whatever for you. But, by plugging into your local Facebook groups, it's NC Unexpected Homeschoolers is one. Homeschool Moms Around White County is another really good resources in terms of finding out, keeping up with what's going on, what's available at any given time.
Okay, those are great. And then I know that we're working on some resources that we can post in the Relocating to Raleigh group. We should have them sometime in the next few days, and we'll post them in the file section in the Relocating to Raleigh group. And then I guess the only question that I see that we had was, is there a person or center that offers homeschooling? So is there a center or virtual learning centers popping up because of COVID, or what are you seeing?
Well, there are definitely some places that you can go to kind of have that supervision of the virtual learning, not necessarily homeschooling. Homeschooling, once you get beyond just a couple of hours a day of somebody else managing your child's education, then they're really in the realm of a private school. Yeah. So that's kind of something. However, it's one of my goals has been working towards having a community center for homeschoolers to go to, where people can come and run classes, can come and, kind of hang out or find other people to do homework with. And one of my goals is to even have, a little bit of co-working space, or if you need just an hour or two to do something and your kids need to be doing something productive under another adult supervision, we can do that. Yep. So definitely plug in. We'll be announcing some opportunities to support that in the coming weeks. And but it's really just a variety of taking advantage of the track out camp type of places, the Ys, there is ways to manage your child not necessarily being able to care for themselves at home all of the time, where they can plug in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm going to post your contact info, Laura shared it with us, trianglehomeschoolresources.com, and then facebook.com, /Triangle Homeschool Resources. That's a mouthful.
It is. It's kind of a long one.
But we really appreciate your time and you coming on to talk about this, subject with people. It is something that we get asked about a lot. So we really appreciate you, being on here, providing resources for everyone moving to the area regarding homeschool, or even people who already live in the Triangle area and want to know more about homeschooling. So thank you very much. And
thank you.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. This was a great add-on to the school series that we were doing. So just so everyone knows, next week we're going to be continuing on same time, same place on Sunday afternoon. We're going to have a school consultant on next week. So we'll post more details in the future. But for the meantime, Laina will post more resources on the files. If you want to contact her, there's her contact info. And again, thank you very, very much for your time and for being here this afternoon on this beautiful day. So
it is. It's gorgeous. Getting ready to head outside for a little while, and then indulge in all the pies for Pie Day, right? That's like a totally nerdy thing that we've gotten into since school.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I gotta go get some pie.
There you go. There you go. All right.
We appreciate it very much. And, we'll get everything from you and post it on the files. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to continue posting on the stream, and we can go back and answer any questions as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Allison.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.